big fight in Saudi Arabia next Saturday, Anthony Joshua, Usyk. I think one of the things I want to start off talking to you about is that I spoke to Peter Fury a while ago. The big question about AJ having two trainers in his corner, and I know you've never worked alongside with somebody else before. I think Peter's words at the time to me were, he was quite explicit about it. I think he said, get a fucking grip. You don't need all these yes men in your corner. You just need one trainer. What's your views on that? And, do you agree with Peter?
Yeah, look, for me, that's the way it is. You have one trainer, you listen to one person. You don't want to be listening to 10 different people's opinions. Those other opinions might be right, but that leads on to something else. There's a plan. If I'm going to drive to London, I'm going to go on the M1 and come off at the bottom of the M1 onto the North Circular. Somebody might want to get down to the M1 and take the M25 to get into London. There's various ways, but you need to know your route in advance, and you need to listen to one person, because when it's going wrong, that one person who's got the plan should know the way to correct it. I'm with Peter on that one. You don't need all these backslappers and people. Robert McCracken brought AJ all the way through, and he knows AJ inside out, from a very inexperienced amateur fighter to one of the top heavyweights in the world, if not at one point the top heavyweight in the world. So that's experience you can't buy. He knows AJ's mental frame, he knows all these things. And I'll relate this back. He's got the American trainer or the Mexican trainer, and he doesn't really know what AJ's emotional makeup is, or what he's like as a person. Not only is he having to learn how to train him, he's having to learn the guy inside out as well. And this goes back to the Amir Khan fight with Kell Brook. I've known Kell Brook since he was 10 years old, and Amir Khan went to Bomac, who didn't know him, and trained him a certain way. And he's supposed to be a great trainer, because he's trained his man Crawford, and it didn't work. So for all his genius, Bomac's genius, it didn't work for Khan, did it? Because he didn't know Khan's emotional makeup, what he was capable of as a trainer, as a fighter. How to train him as a fighter. You need to know these things. You need to know, I keep saying it over and over again, you need to know when to push these guys, when to hold them back, what's going off in their private life. You don't need 10 people making that decision from. It's got to be a relationship between you and the fighter. And the better you know the fighter, and the better the fighter knows you, the better the teamwork on the night.
It's interesting you say that, because I've got a quote here from Robert Garcia, which I was going to ask you about next anyway. He said about the whole mental side of it, he said, AJ has created a team of not only me and Angel, he's hired other people, not trainers, different people that could help with the way he's thinking, somebody that's with him thinking in a positive way. So it sounds like there's people also in the team that are helping him think positive and the mental aspect of the game. Does stuff like that work from your experience, or?
Well, look, when you get in that ring, it's just you. And I can only ever relate to fighters I've dealt with in the past. Some very weak-minded fighters, when they start out, have had to be strong because they've had to do the thinking for themselves. And one of those fighters was Johnny Nelson. He was the most negative, unassured, lacking in confidence fighters we ever had. He was absolutely useless. And apart from Brendan talking to him, and it was only Brendan, over and over again, just one person. He only ever listened to one person through his influential years, from 14 years old to whatever it was. He had to learn it himself. Nobody could learn it for him. He had to go through those lessons himself. And that's the making of the fighter. Nobody else can do that for you. So I do have to laugh sometimes when they have these mind coaches, for positive reinforcement or whatever. And another example, Kell Brook. No matter what you say to Kell Brook, how are you feeling today? If he's had a bad spar, he's got punched in the face, or he got beat, I'm all right. Open up a bit. Don't want to open up. They don't want to tell anybody anything, because if they tell anybody anything, that's admitting that there's a weakness. And what I found with good fighters is they don't ever admit that. They keep it to themselves and they turn it over in the head. That's what they do. They work it out for themselves. They go through dark times. You've heard Kell Brook so many times. I've been through dark times. Yeah, that's trying to work it out in your head where you need to go. Not somebody telling you. How can you trust anybody else who's never been in that ring and got hit in the face? How can anybody else tell you how to deal with it? Even ex-fighters can't really tell you how to do that. It's a process you have to learn by getting your hand burnt You're putting your hand in the fire so many times, you're going to get burnt, you're going to find a different way. And that's the only way to do it. And in my opinion, in my belief, in all the fighters I've ever had, I've seen people with these positive affirmations about what they've got to do. Have your belief in your training system, have your belief in your trainer, have your belief in your ability, and have your belief in what you're doing in the gym. You can't rely on anybody else for your belief. You've got to believe in yourself. So if somebody's trying to install into you self-belief at the stage that AJ is at, there's something seriously wrong.
Well, on that note, I know we've talked about how the negative impact it can have on you, but could there be positive impacts as well? Obviously, having two brains in there, two pieces of advice, two people from different backgrounds. Surely there's got to be a positive aspect to that as well.
Not in my opinion. I mean, it might work for some people, and there might be cases in boxing where, you know, it has worked, and there might be examples of that. But I've never seen it. You know, I've never seen it at all.
And the next question, it's kind of two questions rolled into one. Amir Khan was recently out with Usyk in Dubai, because that's where Usyk's been training in Dubai. And Amir's done an interview the last couple of days saying that Usyk's apparently put 15 kg of muscle on. And he does look quite big in recent videos. So what do you think of the fact that he's clearly put a lot of size on in the short space of time, if that is true? And predict the fight for me, break it down for me. How do you think it's going to go second time around?
Well, you know, I never watched the fight live when it happened. I watched it a few times, bits and bats of highlights, but the last few days, because I normally do this interview, I've watched the full fight. And when I heard the scores at the end, I think Howard Foster had it 115, 113, and another judge had it 116, 112, which is a point either way. There was a score of 117, 112, which I thought was a bit wide. And watching the fight, it was quite even up to round 6, I thought. For various reasons, but then it's almost like they both got told it's kind of even, you need to step on it. And also the pace from round 7 onwards seemed to pick up from the first 6 rounds. The first 6 rounds was more like a kind of feeling kind of thing, and Usyk was doing a lot of feints, you know, setting up shots he was throwing feints to the body to see what AJ was coming back with. Then he waited till later in the round, then he'd throw that shot, he'd hit AJ, and then he'd be away from the countering shots. One mistake that AJ was doing, the thing what worked for AJ is his straight shots worked great when he did do it. There odd occasion he caught with a backhand hook. But whenever AJ tried to slip outside of Usyk's jab, this way outside of the jab so it would slip past him, he kind of, to throw his shot, he kind of dropped his left hand, and Usyk was timing him for the right hook. Now if AJ can change that when he's doing these dip out shots to cover himself and have his chin covered, it'll be more effective. He applies more straight shots to be more effective. He's seen the trickiest version of Usyk because he's fighting a lighter man, but we don't know what Usyk was capable of against a good heavyweight. We saw him against Chisora, I think it was, but against AJ, we've no idea. And AJ was quite good on his feet. He was quite fast for a big guy. It was only from round 7, 8, 9, AJ kind of upped the tempo, but Usyk followed him. But what happened is, in the next 3 rounds, 10, 11 and 12, AJ started to fade, whereas Usyk kept the pace from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For the next 6 rounds, pace was constant. And it wasn't like Usyk couldn't be hit, because AJ caught him with some good shots when he did, and he took a couple of steps back, and sometimes when he realised, Usyk had to step back in to get the points back by scoring more. So AJ did catch him with shots. Probably gave him a bit too much respect in that fight for his boxing, AJ did. And, you know, then in the last round, Usyk stepped up the pace and caught him. I don't think it's a good thing, Usyk coming in 15 pounds heavier, because that will be more beneficial to AJ. It will slow Usyk down, and really what actually beat AJ in that fight was Usyk's superior movement. He was fast on his feet, he got the angles. And if you look when Usyk's fighting, AJ stood and he's got his head quite levelled up. Usyk's kind of aiming down and looking through the top of his forehead and watching AJ's feet, and his peripheral vision is looking at the shots, so he can anticipate the shots coming to him, whereas AJ's quite straight up. So when Usyk's throwing the shots, AJ's really got to adjust a lot to get his head out of the way. But if you look at Usyk, his head's always slightly moving from the neck, from the body, from the shoulders. Whereas AJ's kind of moving from the waist when he's rolling shots. But Usyk's a combination of waist, kind of chest, neck. He's got kind of 3 angles of movement. Whereas AJ's quite robotic how he slips shots. So I don't think it's beneficial for Usyk to come in heavy because it will work better for AJ.
And in short, with Robert Garcia in his corner, Usyk putting all that size on, and AJ, obviously there's footage of him, it looks like he's going to be attacking the body and he's going to be a lot more aggressive than the first fight. In your opinion, from what you've seen in the first fight, what happens in the rematch?
The only problem with attacking the body, and obviously Usyk's a shorter guy, you're dipping down a bit and he's kind of playing into Usyk's range then. So it's not necessarily a good thing unless you know how to do it correctly. A new trainer, you see, watching that fight back, the first fight, for me, it was quite, you expect, everybody's perception is, AJ's a bigger guy, Usyk's coming from cruiserweight, AJ should really win this fight. But what balances it out is, Usyk's a better fighter, better boxer than AJ. So that kind of levels up the playing field. So it makes it an even fight. But then Usyk winning, you think, well, AJ's rubbish. No, he's not rubbish. It's just that if it was any other heavyweight, because they don't move as fast as Usyk, maybe apart from Deontay Wilder, might be an hard fight for AJ. You got it in your mind thinking AJ should win. But he really needs to probably, I kind of said that he shouldn't have done this, but watching the fight, if Usyk's coming in heavier, and AJ boxing at the rate that he did, Usyk's going to be slower, he's going to play, and he wasn't like gassed at the end, Usyk, he was tired, not as gassed as Joshua. But carrying that extra weight, he's not going to know until he gets in the fight if he's going to carry that weight properly, because he will have an effective fighting weight where he can throw the shots, he can recover in between throwing the shots. Carrying another extra 15 pounds is like going in the ring with a rucksack on your back. So if AJ fights like he did last time, but covers a few points, making sure he's well guarded, throwing more straight shots, aiming a bit lower down, probably to his chest area to catch Usyk as he's dipping, but not too much to the body. They're thinking body to slow him down. But realistically, he should be slowed down from the 15 pounds of weight gain. I don't care what anybody says, you can't move faster with 15 pounds of weight gain. That's for more power. And really, Usyk didn't need power to beat AJ because there was only a lot of the odd power shot in that fight. Most were flick shots on target to set AJ off so he could land a power shot. It might have been 10 flicks to 2 power shots in that fight for Usyk. But the times when he did hit Joshua, they were well timed and on target and actually affected him. But the rest of them were tip-taps, which, AJ kind of walked through a little bit. But it always kept AJ on his toes, thinking, well, I don't know what's coming next. Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be soft? Is it going to be a tap? So it always kept AJ thinking. So he never knew when the shot was going to be a power shot or a flick shot or whatever, or a feint to the body. So AJ is always anticipating. So being 15 pounds heavier is going to slow Usyk down anyway. So do you need to use body shots? Maybe the odd one, but it shouldn't be part of the game plan. The game plan should really be, AJ, use your height and your reach, hit him with straight shots, which were, if they counted the shots in that fight, they were the more scoring shots for AJ, the straight shots, not the hooks. The uppercut worked for AJ on occasion because Usyk did dip down onto it. But realistically, for the shorter guy, it's easy to get under those shots, under the hooks from a taller guy. I know there's not much difference in height, maybe 1 or 2 inches. But the straight shots is what AJ should have been working on to keep the range and the distance. And that's where the accurate, punching from AJ came.
Who wins?
It's another one again, isn't it, where we're looking and thinking, Usyk in the last fight.
Just based on what you know.
Right, you don't want to develop it, right.
Just based on what because you've kind of broke it down really well there.
I'm going to say, based on the last fight, based on Anthony Joshua having a different trainer, obviously the weight game doesn't play in Usyk's favour. I'm going to say it's going to be a close fight, and Usyk will probably win again, but it'll be a very, very tough fight. This time I think it may be a split decision, but like I always say, first 3 rounds will count for everything. I think it's not necessarily an advantage having a new trainer, because they're already familiar what Usyk's done. What we saw Usyk in the last fight against Joshua was the best version of Usyk. He can't get any better than that. That's the best version of him. Whereas AJ had more of an insight, having getting into the ring. He knows the trickiness of it all. He knows what he's got to do. You understand? Obviously, Usyk knows what AJ's got. But all I'm saying to her is that Usyk is a tricky fighter, and he didn't manage to stop AJ. He got him in trouble a few times, but AJ did a good 12 rounds at a good pace from round 6 onwards. I'm going to say, just because he beat him last time, I'm going to say it's going to swing in the favour of Usyk. But don't be surprised in this fight, it could actually be Joshua, but I'm going to say Usyk very close decision.
Interesting.